And welcome back. I'm Roby Brock. I am joined now to talk politics by Dr. Jay Barth, Professor of Political Science at Hendrix College, Clint Reed, Principal, Director, Co-owner. What other titles do you have at Impact Management Group?
New haircut.
New haircut. All right. And you don't have a new haircut, so, well,
I'm consistent.
You've trimmed up there, but that's good. So, all right. So together we have been collaborating all year long on some new poll numbers. I went through them in the last block here, and I want to run through with you guys some, in this particular instance, let's go through some Hillary Clinton and some Mike Huckabee numbers here. Hillary Clinton upside down in her favorable ratings, Mike Huckabee ahead in his favorable ratings, but I wouldn't say it's a big distance between there. Did either of those results surprise either one of you?
Yeah, we had done some polling on these figures. It's been a while now, maybe sometime last year, and Huckabee was kind of more positive at that point than he is now. Hillary Clinton, I think, pretty much stable. And you know, I think the big story on Hillary Clinton is that despite her Arkansas roots, she is now a national Democratic political figure, and if you're a national Democrat in Arkansas, that's not good.
Still better than Obama's numbers, 33%. Right. She's at least at 38. Right. So
everybody likes to talk about whether Hillary will be competitive in Arkansas, and there's just no way. Arkansas is done being a target state on presidential campaigns. Her numbers are not good and are very reflective of the 2014 exit polling numbers, which were very similar. She has nowhere to go here.
Does she, though, give Democrats maybe down ballot a little bit of a boost, just from going from 33 to 38%? Does that make any particular smaller races competitive?
I don't know that it makes races necessarily competitive. I just think it makes life less complicated for Democrats, because the last 6 or 7 years, Arkansas Democrats have really had to show their allegiance to the party at the same time they're distancing themselves from their president or presidential candidate. I think with Hillary Clinton, that doesn't have to happen anymore. And so despite the fact that she certainly doesn't aid them in any way, I think she just makes their life less complicated than the previous
If you look at our
Democrats.
numbers, sorry to interrupt, if you look at our numbers, the 2nd District may be a district that she could provide some buoy for a congressional candidate per se. I mean, if you look at where national Democrats have to try to get a toehold, I think the 2nd District is still Pulaski County's the anchor there. That could be a district that I think the polling gives some indication she might do better. Still not great, still not good, but it's better than what you're going to get in some of the rural
areas. But for the
areas.
Republicans, Barack Obama will still be on the ballot in the next election cycle, even though he won't be on the ballot, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
from a strategy standpoint.
This is the 3rd term. I mean, Hillary will be the 3rd term for Barack Obama. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. What are you gonna say,
I think the key question is, do Democrats invest here? I mean, because to maximize Little Rock turnout and North Little Rock turnout, which is really where the heart of that Pulaski County 2nd District vote is, they've got to have infrastructure in place that hasn't been in place in the last couple of presidential cycles. It certainly was there 2 years ago, but that's the key question.
All right, let's go to the head-to-head matchups here, because this is interesting to me. You've got, as we indicated earlier, Hillary Clinton 33% versus a Republican nominee at 50%. She actually does better in a head-to-head matchup with Mike Huckabee. 51 to 37% Huckabee wins, but her numbers improve. What's the difference, do you think?
To me, the big difference is Huckabee's well-known name. Obviously has Arkansas roots. I think at the end of the day, Hillary just doesn't have any sort of infrastructure that I think what Jay was talking about. To me, it all comes down to our state is not the state that even it was 10 years ago. Yeah. We are a conservative state. It's a conservative electorate. You know, the Democrat Party and the people who were voting in the Democrat Party primary 10, 15, 20 years ago, they're Republicans. You're seeing that now. Independent voters are breaking against Hillary and against the, Barack Obama in big ways. So Huckabee's going to get an advantage because of that. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure this thing's even going to be competitive if it were to shake up.
Why do you think the race is tighter between Hillary Clinton and a generic Republican presidential candidate versus Huckabee?
Well, I think I think Huckabee has some. He's well known, and I think some of those folks who in a generic race say I don't know, when they have to make a choice, I think he does have some baggage. And particularly on this part, I noticed that we did phone and online, and Huckabee does particularly poorly with online voters,
Which tend to skew where?
Tend to skew more Democratic nationally. And younger, and I think that the culture war stuff just simply does not resonate with
that base.
with that base, with online voters, with younger voters.
What are you going to say, Clint?
I think, to me, if you look at where Huckabee's coming from versus Hillary, I mean, still very much a rural state. If you look at the Second Amendment stuff, I mean, that stuff, he's pretty well known for that. For that, he's served in Arkansas for the last, as governor. Just a few years ago. So look, I mean, she hadn't lived here in a while. So this thing's.
She's got an airport named after her. There. Now, come on.
But
all a name.
That's not good for much points.
But obviously, to get to that point, Mike Huckabee has to win a nomination, and I think that remains an incredible long shot. And I think I agree with Clinton. Unless something bizarre happens, Arkansas is not a competitive.
You're putting your money on Donald Trump instead?
That would be something bizarre happening.
That was my other point, is I think you've got 18 candidates thinking about running on the Republican side. So when you think about a generic candidate, somebody's going to look and go, well, I'm not sure who that generic candidate is. I mean, you've got Rand Paul, Donald Trump.
Bush, you got Donald Trump. You've got a lot to choose from there, a little variety.
You have a lot to make a voter stay undecided at this point.
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick commercial break. Let's come back and look at some U.S. Senate numbers that we want to talk about as well. So I'm with Jay Barth and Clint Reed. This is Talk Business and Politics. We'll be back right after this word from our sponsors. All right, I'm Roby Brock. We're talking politics with Dr. Jay Barth from Hendrix College, Clint Reed from Impact Management Group. I've held these numbers for this particular block here so that we can run through them because they're fascinating, even though they're probably improbable here. In the 2016 general election, if it were held today, Senator John Boozman was the Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate, and former Governor Mike Beebe was the Democratic nominee. Who would you be more likely to vote for? 37% John Boozman, 45% Mike Beebe, 18% don't know. Unlikely to happen, but Democrats have to be thrilled to see that kind of number right there. And I think Mike Beebe's phone may start ringing early this morning. So,
well, I think that despite the fact that Senator Boozman has been the U.S. Senator now for nearly a full term, he's just not a household name the way that Mike Beebe is. And I think Mike Beebe, throughout his governorship, he ran incredibly well with independents. If a Democrat can break even with independents in Arkansas, they're in pretty strong shape. Again, this is in all likelihood not going to happen. He said it again and again that he is retired. But the Mike Beebe brand is a distinctly powerful brand in contemporary Arkansas politics.
It's not going to happen, but I think it shows you just where the Democrat Party needs to be competitive in these races. Mike Beebe won 75 counties when he ran for re-election, very popular among independents, the likes that I have not seen in any of our polling in several years among Democrats, especially.
And did it while the state was turning red.
And did it while the state was turning red. So it's not a huge surprise to me. He is a household name, governed very conservatively, if you can say that about a statewide Democrat candidate now. So I think it paints a really good picture of where the Democrats need to be. You contrast with Hillary Clinton, who her numbers are polar opposites among independents statewide. I mean, it's where Democrats need to be looking.
Well, but I do think, in 2014, for instance, a lot of the Democrats on the statewide ballot were very much with Mike Beebe in terms of ideology. They were supporting the programs he had supported.
It just didn't translate.
And he indeed endorsed, and yet he didn't have ability to translate. It really is a unique brand at this point in time. And so, despite I think Democrats should run there ideologically, but if the person isn't there, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, and there's really not anybody talking about running against Senator John Boozman. Have any of you even heard a name that's even been mentioned?
I've heard a name.
You've heard a name. Are you going to share with us? You're not going to?
No, but I have heard a name.
Okay.
I think I'll say that I think it is the kind of race for a younger candidate who doesn't have statewide name recognition, where they could get a good deal of name recognition, which might set them up for the future. And I think that's the kind of person who may look at the race.
I just don't think this race is as competitive. I mean, Beebe is the only candidate that makes it competitive. Throw out any name. Dustin McDaniel, who I think has a future on down the road. It's just not a competitive race.
Does Boozman have a problem? Because we didn't put these out earlier, but I mean, we have them on our website here. But John Boozman's job approval numbers: 42% approved, 21% disapprove, which is a nice, healthy 2-to-1 margin. But 37% unknown, don't know, no. And we've seen that consistently in John Boozman polling. Why is he so unknown?
It would be a real problem if Arkansas was a more truly purple state. It would be a big problem. But it's not. I mean, he's just got, he's going to have the R after his name. And I think right now in this atmosphere, I think that's a big advantage. And so I do think that Beebe probably is the only person. Is Boozman the kind of candidate against whom somebody might overperform? Possibly. Yeah. If they had the kind of persona, they put together a grassroots campaign, that might could overperform because he is so soft.
I'll give you the last word.
No, I don't think he has any problems whatsoever based on just the overall electorate of our state and where our state has moved to. It's part of John Boozman's personality. He's soft, he's quiet, he's unassuming. It's the way he likes it. He raises some money, puts $1 million in the bank, reminds people of who he is and his voting record. It's a slam dunk.
I'll just add this last thought before we wrap up here. Tom Cotton's unknowns were half of what John Boozman's were. There's some stronger opinions there.
I was going to say, he's not Tom Cotton, a very polarizing figure.
All right, Clint Reed, Jay Barr, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we're back with more right after this word from our sponsors. And welcome to this Talk Business and Politics Web Extra. I'm with Dr. Jay Barr from Hendrix College, Clint Reed from Impact Management Group. All right, we've been talking about a bunch of candidate matchups and everything. We put another question in our survey here: online voters as well as phone automated calls. If a business provides wedding services such as catering or flowers, should it be allowed to refuse those services to same-sex couples for religious reasons, or be required to provide those services as it would to all other customers? This is the RFRA question, basically. 54% say they should be allowed to refuse services. 29% say they should be required. 18% unknown. Surprised by these results?
Not really. I mean, what we replicated a way the question has been asked nationally, and nationally, especially after the events in Indiana and here in Arkansas, we did see some movement nationally in a direction that was more towards requiring service, a more pro anti-discrimination voice nationally. Here in Arkansas, I think more sentiment for folks' religious beliefs trumping anti-discrimination laws. So that will be that I think does at its core indicate kind of where Arkansas is culturally as compared to the rest of the country.
Mm-hmm. What's fascinating to me is there's a lot of discussion about this movement toward this national movement and even a movement in the state of equality. I just don't think our electorate is there yet. If you look at 2004, 75% of the people that went and voted for traditional marriage. Mm-hmm. If you look at the exit numbers from 2014, almost 70% still believes that marriage should be between a man and a woman, should not believe that legal same-sex marriage should apply. This is just a proxy issue on the same-sex issue. To me, what's really fascinating, which it's your intuition, is that the younger people under 30, they believe that those institutions should provide the services. Basically, everything above 30, they believe that the institution should have the ability to make that decision. And it's very fascinating. I think it's something that I'm going to continue to track. But again, it's just a proxy issue and the bigger issue nationally.
Mm-hmm. I do think the marriage piece is something that muddies this story in some ways. I think if it's other aspects of discrimination against LGBT individuals, I think that really is different than the marriage piece. And so I think that there is some issues there, but clearly, obviously, with the Supreme Court's action on its way, that's likely to be a particular issue in the months ahead.
Yeah, we're taping on a Wednesday afternoon here, and potentially on Thursday morning, the Supreme Court could rule on the constitutionality of same-sex marriages. So, do you think that ruling, depending on how it comes down, does it change public opinion any, or does it keep everybody fairly divided in where they are?
Oh no, I think the division spike. I think the intensity behind this issue spikes. I think both sides dig in. It becomes a national election issue, no matter how the Supreme Court decides.
Actually, I mean, I think we're over the hump in terms of national support for marriage equality and with the generational dynamics. I think where it shows up is in Republican primary politics, and candidates really having to make a choice there in terms of whether they go with the Ted Cruz type direction where they really kind of stand up on this issue, or whether they say the tide is turning and we basically have to adapt to a changing world.
I disagree just a little bit in that it's not, I don't believe it's just a Republican primary issue. I think it's a turnout issue in terms of, from a national standpoint, of reminding Christian conservatives, evangelicals, that this is part of our core beliefs, and you have to get up and go to the polls, very much the way the Bush campaign in 2004 used these ballot measures around the country to turn out evangelicals. So I believe that both sides dig in. I think the equality side and the Christian conservative sides, no matter what the Supreme Court decides. I think it's far from being over in terms of, maybe the issue and the policy is decided from the Supreme Court side, but I still think it's going to be played out in the political arena.
I do think the world's changed since 2004 in terms of, first off, the religious right is smaller as a percentage of the overall electorate, and moreover, even among Christian conservatives, younger voters are beginning to deviate.
What about independents, though? In the crosstabs in here, where do we see them coming down on this issue, and where do we see them nationally on this issue?
They're not as strong as where Republicans are, but much different than where Democrats are, self-identified Democrats. Not supportive of the issue. Much more in line. The passion is probably not there. I mean, we didn't ask an intensity question on our survey, but I wouldn't imagine that the passion is there the way it is with Republicans, but it's closer to the Republican side than obviously the Democrat side.
Right, and nationally, independents are actually closer to Democrats on this issue. And I think it's the fact that Arkansas independents are really, in many cases, Republicans who have yet to capture that label.
So it's not a swing vote issue, though. You don't think it plays to the bases is where you see it playing?
It's a base issue.
It's an intensity turnout issue.
Right.
All right.
Which is probably good for Hillary Clinton in a lot of states that she has to win,
We'll
but
find
not
out.
so good in Arkansas.
A debate that we'll have in the coming months here. All right, Clint Reed with Impact Management Group, Dr. Jay Barth with Hendrix College. Thank you both.
Thanks.